Hey, 42 here. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with an eerie feeling that someone or something is watching you? Or maybe you've seen a pair of eyes in the darkness staring back at you and deep into your soul. Are demons responsible for these spine-tingling moments? Are demons even real, and is it possible to become possessed by one? These terrifying real-life stories seem to suggest that they're more than just fables. These demonic possession stories will surely send shivers down your spine. First up is the possession of German-born Anneliese Michel. This terrifying account was so convincing that Hollywood couldn't help themselves but make a film out of it. The 2005 film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, was based on the real-life case of Anneliese Michel. Michel had always had problems whilst growing up. She suffered from epilepsy and mental illness, for which she was treated at a psychiatric hospital. However, it was not until 1973, when Michel was 20 years old, when things really started to get weird. Michel became suicidal. She started to vehemently reject all religious objects and symbols. She drank her own urine and started hearing voices which told her to rot in hell. She also started seeing the faces of devils. Catholic Bishop Joseph Stangl used his utmost authority as a member of the Catholic Church to deduce that this behaviour wasn't normal for a 20-year-old girl, and she was likely possessed by a demon. Stangl performed an exorcism ritual in total secrecy. Over the next 10 months, Michel had a staggering 70 exorcisms performed on her. Meanwhile, her parents stopped treating her epilepsy and mental disorders. After a year of this, she died of dehydration and malnutrition. The priests who conducted the exorcisms were found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 months behind bars. I think there's an important lesson here. If the first 20 exorcisms don't work out, the next 50 probably aren't going to either. Next up is the unnerving story of Michael Taylor, who lived with his wife Christine in a small town called Ozet in Great Britain. The couple were very religious and regularly attended a Christian prayer group. At one peculiar meeting in 1974, Michael's wife Christine Taylor accused her husband of having an affair with the leader of the prayer group. Taylor obviously wasn't too pleased with this accusation, because he began to spew obscenities at his wife and started to act extremely erratic, which was very much out of character for him. Witnesses concluded that he had been possessed by some kind of evil spirit. This insane behaviour continued for months until Taylor eventually consulted a priest, who performed an exorcism on him, which lasted for a grueling 24 hours. According to the priests involved in the exorcism, they removed 40 demons from Taylor's body. However, the priests warned him that the demons may still have remained dormant in his soul. And they weren't far wrong, because Taylor then went home and brutally murdered his wife and their dog. After which he wandered the streets for hours, covered in blood, before being arrested. Next up is the real-life account that the infamous 1974 film The Exorcist is based on. But there's a twist. The actual possession happened to a male, not a female like in the film. The actual possession happened to 14-year-old Roland Doe, which is actually not his real name. The Catholic Church assigned this pseudonym to him to protect the boy's privacy. The bone-chilling real-life story goes like this. It was the late 1940s in Cottage City, Maryland, and Roland Doe attempted to contact his late aunt through a Ouija board. Many believe this is what opened the door to a flurry of demons who wished to possess him. Unfortunately, the countless horror films where little Jimmy finds a Ouija board in the attic and accidentally brings through 1,000 evil demons hadn't yet been made. So poor Roland Doe was none the wiser. His family started to hear strange sounds around the house, such as scratching, dripping water, and unexplained footsteps. Then religious artifacts started flying from the walls. Then Doe levitated into the air, his body unnaturally contorted, speaking in tongues in a guttural voice. It was about then that the boy's family decided it was about time to do something about this unnatural behaviour. They brought in a priest to perform an exorcism. The ritual was performed over 30 times before the priest deemed it successful. Doe injured the priest multiple times during the exorcisms. Those present reported a horrible sulphuric odour lingering in the air afterwards. Afterwards, Doe returned to his normal life. Next up is George Lukens, a man from England in the late 17th century. Lukens was a greedy bugger because he claimed to be possessed by not one, but 7 demons, and he requested 7 different priests to remove the demons from his body. It all started when Sarah Barber, a close friend of Lukens, noticed that he had started to act rather strangely. According to Barber, Lukens had slowly deteriorated mentally and physically over the past 18 years. He started to have seizures and growl at people around him. He talked in disturbing, supernatural tones. In 1778, 7 priests performed a lengthy exorcism on Lukens at the Temple Church in Bristol, England. As soon as the exorcism commenced with one of the priests singing a hymn, Lukens turned extremely violent and started barking and hissing at the priests. Lukens then cycled through 7 different demonic personalities over the span of the exorcism, before finally declaring out loud that he was the devil himself. Afterwards, according to the priests who were present, the exorcism was a success, the demons were sent back to hell, and George Lukens returned to a normal life. Next up is a story of the infamous serial killer who was supposedly spurred on to kill by a demon. He was known as the Son of Sam, although his real name was David Berkowitz. Berkowitz began murdering in 1976 and continued his ruthless killing campaign for an entire year before he was caught. His killings all had a very similar MO. He would approach a stranger in the dead of night and shoot them with a .44 revolver. Then he would leave immediately, without uttering a word. However, at one of the crime scenes, the police found a stomach-turning note left by Berkowitz. The note talked about his father, called Sam, who drank blood and kept Berkowitz locked in an attic. The note also said that Father Sam commands Berkowitz to go out and kill. But this is the strange part, as if it wasn't strange already. Berkowitz didn't have a father named Sam. His father was actually called Tony. So who on earth, or hell, was Sam? Well, get this. According to Berkowitz, Sam was the name of the demon who possessed his neighbour's dog. Yes, dog. When Berkowitz, aka the Son of Sam as he had come to be known, was finally arrested in 1977, after killing 6 known victims, he confessed to his murders. He explained how his neighbour's dog was a conduit for an evil demon, and that the dog had commanded him to carry out every murder. So remember guys, if you don't have an alibi, you can always blame it on the dog. Actually no, wait, that doesn't work at all. David Berkowitz got 6 life sentences for his evil demon dog-fueled murders. Next we go to Natal, South Africa, where in 1906 a Christian student named Clara Germana Selle started to act very strangely. Up until the age of 16, Clara had always been a very ordinary girl. But that all changed pretty quickly when Clara started displaying some rather incredible yet creepy superhuman powers. Clara started to speak and understand German, French and Polish fluently, despite the fact that she had never studied or even heard these languages before. Clara was also able to reveal the most intimate secrets about people whom she'd never met before. Clara started to mysteriously levitate vertically out of her bed, and she had superhuman levels of strength, able to throw people twice her size across the room. It is said by witnesses that her voice sounded like a veritable herd of wild beasts orchestrated by Satan. Clara later revealed that she had made a pact with Satan, giving him the ability to take over her body. Had she really made a pact with Satan? Well, the local priest certainly thought so. 2 priests performed an exorcism on Clara that lasted 2 days, during which over 170 people witnessed her levitating several feet in the air whilst the priests read scriptures. After the exorcism, it was a general consensus of the priests and those present that the evil spirits had been expunged from her body. Presumably Satan was displeased that Clara hadn't kept her end of the bargain. In 2008, a board-certified psychiatrist at New York Medical College, named Dr. Richard Gallagher, was given a very unique opportunity. A bishop asked him to provide a psychiatric analysis of a woman who claimed to be possessed by demons. Usually scientists and doctors just pass off these cases as mental illness, but Gallagher put his prejudices aside and agreed to examine her regardless. During the examination, the woman, who was given the pseudonym of Julia to protect her identity, started out completely normal, but then demons obviously reminded her of the small fact that she was possessed, because she suddenly went into a trance-like state, followed by a fit of rage. She started to shout at Gallagher and others in the room, telling them to go away, you idiots, leave her alone. Julia started to shake violently. Then objects flew from the shelves. After Gallagher examined Julia, a decision was reached between the bishop and himself that Julia should be exorcised. During the exorcism, Julia screamed obscenities at the priests in Latin and Spanish. She reportedly levitated 5 centimeters off the ground for half an hour, and she screamed in pain when she was sprinkled with holy water. And finally is the infamous murder trial of Arne Cheyenne Johnson in 1981. This was the first ever case in the US where a lawyer pleaded their client's innocence on the grounds of demonic possession. In other words, he didn't do it, it was the demon. But how did Johnson find himself in court? Well, about a year earlier, Johnson stabbed his landlord, Alan Bono, to death with a pocket knife in Connecticut. Before the stabbing, family members close to Johnson began having demonic visions and heard noises in the house, such as footsteps, doors slamming, and mysterious voices. Johnson's fiance's younger brother, David, reported seeing an apparition that looked like, quote-unquote, a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features and jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Shortly afterwards, David started having convulsions, and bruises appeared on his body. He started to shout at the family in Latin. A few days later, Johnson himself said he had also become possessed. It all eventually came to a climax a few weeks later, when the family held a party in their home. According to everyone who attended the party, Johnson went into a trance, walked slowly towards his landlord, growling under his breath. Then, all of a sudden, stabbed him multiple times in the chest. A year later, and the judge at Johnson's murder trial ruled that demonic possession was not a valid defense against murder, and Johnson was given a 20-year prison sentence. Thanks for the view. Subscribe for more. 42.
The existence of demonic possession is a widely held religious belief. In Islamic mythology, the jinn are supernatural beings that can invade the body. Within the Christian tradition, exorcism dates back to the New Testament, when Jesus expelled demons on a number of occasions.